A few months ago, I made a video talking about how much I was enjoying the Apothecary Diaries, with a focus on how its setting and systems of power were the basis for incredible character work, especially in our protagonist. Looking back on that video, I stand by everything I said. In fact, I'd argue now that the series is over, you can 5x my praise across the board, especially my points about clever direction and character dynamics. But there's one thing I implied in that video that I disagree with now, that I didn't think that the mystery writing was anything special, just that it was fine. I finalized that script shortly after episode 8 came out, and the video published a few days after episode 10, which is amusing because now with the benefit of hindsight, of course I felt that way in that period of time. Apothecary Diaries had yet to show how great of a mystery series it was, because the time frame that those mysteries are written for are core-long arcs that build over the course of a whole season's worth of runtime, and not the self-contained one-off episode-to-episode style that I've come to expect from this kind of genre in anime. That structural difference is actually part of the reason I've come to love Apothecary Diaries so much, because the far-sighted nature of its writing focus allows for subtle foreshadowing, plot momentum in storylines that might otherwise feel detached with no quote-unquote mystery to speak of, and a real sense of narrative reverberation in the outcomes of those big overarching mysteries. I want to focus first on that idea of standalone episode writing, because the way that Apothecary structures an episode's puzzle can be atypical. Mao Mao's deduction in episode 1 is pretty standard. Audience gets a subtle visual hint before the mystery is even introduced in Lihua's face being a standard color, and then an explicit comparison between her, now whitened face and sickly, versus Gyokuho's natural and healthy complexion when Mao Mao pieces it together, with the reveal coming regarding the poison powder in the third act after Jinshi finds her. This is effectively the genre convention. The mystery is solved at the climax of the episode, with the audience getting hints through visuals and dialogue, with a little bit of cleanup afterwards to send us to credits. This is how, for example, Hyoka handles the vast majority of its mysteries, with Hotaro's deduction coming at the end of the episode, with some exceptions like when the entire episode is a deduction. But Apothecary shrugs this format off pretty quickly. Episode 2's mystery is solved at the halfway point, and then the plot completely shifts into making an aphrodisiac. Frankly, it feels a bit like a tack-on while we learn about Mao Mao's role in the Jade Pavilion, a focus on characters and continuing to understand the world and our characters' positions in it. I have zero issue with that reality. These characters and their relationship to this society is one of Apothecary Diaries' most interesting aspects, but it is funny for a perfectly good mystery to feel de-emphasized in a mystery show. And then we get to episode 4, which I'd argue has no mystery. And even if you disagree, we've got our solution at the very start of the second act, and we as an audience instantly piece it together when Mao Mao does, so this is by all accounts a pretty weak puzzle. Episode 4's brilliance and engaging storyline is in, again, character and world building, stuff I talked about in my previous video, where the quote-unquote solution to the supposed mystery's utility is in letting Mao Mao react and what that reveals about her. In my opinion, this episode climaxes not with that physical scene, but instead with the emotional discussion where Lihua is convinced to live. That's after Asana is created and has no bearing one way or another on the powder reveal. Episode 4 is actually a great example of the other pillar of the audience's engagement with Mao Mao's character as far as the writing is concerned, her problem-solving skills. There is something incredibly enjoyable about watching Mao Mao go through her process. Creating Blue Roses in the second half of the season is one of the most interesting episodes in the show, and in my opinion, there's no mystery to be found there. Because while the skill set from a writing standpoint is similar to mystery deduction, I find that the verve is different. Mao Mao has more, for lack of a better term, character agency when operating in her own system with, the given authority by Jinshi in an episode like the Rose one, but compare that to the societal ones imposed on her where she is still an active character to be clear, but must question and cajole others while aware of and in conjunction with her station and theirs. That variance is actually a really nice spice, where Apothecary can hit you with episode 8, straight up one of the best pure detective fiction anime episodes, with Mao Mao every bit Hotaro's equal, and then episode 17, which has no mystery whatsoever, but is a blast to watch Jinshi be transformed into Jinka using Mao Mao's extensive knowledge, and both types of episodes are incredibly revealing about brothel politics and our cast's relationship with the structures that govern their lives. And another part of the reason that episode 17 works, despite there being no mystery in what is nominally a mystery show, is that it is building into a larger storyline that has been foreshadowed and hinted at since the very beginning of the series. Hyoka's arc mysteries are easy to define. The festival arc stretches from episode 12 to episode 17. It is extremely self-contained with nothing critical to understanding the core mystery occurring outside of its runtime. The same can be said with its other two arc mysteries. But I can't do the same thing with Apothecary Diaries. For the preeminent mystery of the second core, I would need to include episode 9, which is wild because that episode is smack dab in the middle of Apothecary's first core's main mystery. It feels almost intentionally designed to make categorizing episodes a pain in the ass, where one episode could be argued to be in 3 different overarching mysteries, with plotlines that feel like they ebb and flow into one another.
You might think it's weird that I'm harping on this, and I don't disagree, but I think it speaks to Apothecary's willingness to buck trends and do what feels right for this story by incorporating a more thriller vibe in terms of its genre writing compared to detective fiction.
I can't speak to the structure of the original light novel or the manga adaptation, but regardless of whether this is an adaptational decision or a holdover from the source's structure, this is great stuff. When I watched episode 9 prior to my video coming out, I thought that the Conan mystery was another episode 2 stick mystery, which is to say, an addition that had no larger focus besides watching Mao Mao's brilliant deduction and the character revelations regarding Jinshi. And of course, how it built into the discussion at the painted red climax of that episode in how Mao Mao sees her place in the rear palace. Hyoka is chock full of these episodes that are interesting in terms of the process in mystery writing and character development, but do not hold untold mystery revelations for later. So imagine my pleasant surprise when a mystery I had stored away suddenly a handful of episodes later became part of a grand conspiracy. That kind of stuff makes a world and story feel so much more alive, because before, I was already invested. Now you're telling me material that I had thought had served its purpose can come back whenever with a new wrinkle? Now you have my rapt attention. If season 2 suddenly makes that stick mystery build into a larger conspiracy, I will be screaming. Add to that how these arc mysteries are huge events in the storyline. Our honey mystery, that first core conspiracy, has huge ramifications for the plot and the systems we've come to know. Ignore the actual revelations of the mystery for a second. Suddenly we have a new concubine that changes the political landscape of the rear palace, a new position for Mao Mao that changes her interactions and access, and peels back another layer of the palace's political and social structure, with other minor reverberations that markedly change the world outside and thus have impact on our plot. Mao Mao's layoff is a key example of that. The high stakes of these mysteries are matched by equally significant changes to the world that give the lower stakes episodes a bit of heft as they potentially build into the next big one. It's not that Apothecary Diaries doesn't signpost that these mysteries are building into something. The curse that's explained as burning metals in episode 5 is pretty obviously a plot element that's going to be cashed in. But the benefit of leaving something hanging, like how the Conan mystery is originally presented, is that you have no idea when it's going to be brought to the bank, and theoretically could never be, and just be one more random event. And the far-sighted nature of the writing doesn't even stop with the stuff that's already been executed on. The new pure consort, Lolon, would, in a theoretical version of the story with Zero Season 2, be excised from the show entirely. Her inclusion in the second core almost feels like a backdoor pilot, introducing us and hinting at her presumed later relevance, but rightfully not spending too much time on her since the economy of storytelling has no place for little more than basic characterization and role. This is kind of the equivalent to how Apothecary handled the courtesan in the Annex in its first core, hinted at but not given proper focus until it was time for that storyline to take center stage. When I said earlier that this story feels like it has plot lines ebbing and flowing into one another, this is what I mean. Setting up characters long in advance of their relevance makes the world feel alive. It makes them feel like they're not simply plot devices. And I can't wait to see how the storylines that Apothecary's first season set up get executed in season 2, or if the vision of the series goes even further beyond. Apothecary Diaries is a great show. My snap judgment has it as the best anime of winter 2024, and that's over stiff competition like Frieren and Sign of Affection. That is in no small part because I think it's a great mystery series, but what I hope comes across in this video is that part of what I think makes it a great mystery series is that it is occasionally not a mystery show at all. And that to me is indicative of writing that understands its strengths, that forcing a mystery that does not belong would ruin the tension curve, or our character dynamics, or any number of other variables that wind up making this story what it is. I love mystery writing. I have a way too long playlist all about hyokas because I will never get tired of watching and reading detectives solve puzzles with a trick that blows me away. And it is a credit to Apothecary Diaries that it can execute on that trick, set up a payoff for 20 episodes down the line, and also just nail character dynamics without any of that. For the many mysteries that Apothecary Diaries still holds and will give us in the future, I could not be more excited. In regard to why it's such an enjoyable story, I don't think there's much mystery there at all.